Shalom, 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 shalom. Alright, this is Naaman's DC camp. First and foremost, call halal Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushua, Ba'ashim, Dash. Again, double honors. Go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who deserve double honors. Salutations also go out to the fellow Akim out there on the highways and byways, pushing this truth across four corners of the earth, trying to wake up the remaining hopeful elect. Alright, so what we're going to talk about today, going back to what they say, alright, is the CIA's first mission as the CIA, after it was changed over from the OSS, or Office of Strategic Services, World War II. That's what they say, alright? And what we're talking about here is Iran, alright? Mossadegh. So let's go ahead. This is from Democracy Now! And as was usually the case as time goes on, with the advent of technology, more and more increasing, like it says in the scriptures in Daniel. So you're having all this information, alright? People are just bombarded with it now. And a lot of truth that some people never thought would come to the light of day is coming out. Just who was responsible for what, alright? All this so-called conspiracy theory and all this shit, which is just something that's meant to cast doubt in a person, alright? Usually it works, unfortunately. But these documents and things that are coming out now, some in the case of the Kennedy assassination, after the Warren Commission, it's supposed to be sealed for, was it 50 years or whatever have you. It's hell, I can't remember. But, and then when it finally, that seal came off, shit was so heavily redacted, it was like, what the fuck, what was the point? Alright, but still, alright, there are people that are still living that were of that time, of that era. Alright, but in any case, let me get this scripture right off the bat. Luke 8:17 says, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." Simple as that, simple as that, simple as that. Alright. So, let's see. Let's go ahead and get into it for time's sake. I want me flapping my jaws here.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We turn now to look at this 70th anniversary of an event that reshaped the Middle East. The 1953 U.S. and UK-backed coup in Iran that overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. The aftershocks of the coup are still being felt today.
Yep.
The coup came 2 years after Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil industry. He argued Iran should begin profiting from its vast oil reserves, which have been...
Real quick, Salakia, just to prove a point, because certain people will do shit and they'll say later on, after the people that did it to are still fucked up, they'll say, just get over it. Why? Because they want to deny any type of responsibility for the long-term effects of what they have done. See, and that's a defensive tactic, alright? But who cares about your feelings and your children and your grandchildren's feelings? Fuck them. You did this shit. And like she said, the effects of this are still felt. I'm not going to jump ahead, but you'll understand later on.
Exclusively controlled by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. The company later became known as British Petroleum, BP. The coup was led in part by a CIA agent named Kermit Roosevelt, the grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt. The crushing of Iran's first democratic government ushered in more than 2 decades of dictatorship under the Shah, who relied heavily on U.S. aid and arms. The anti-American backlash that toppled the Shah in 1979 shook the whole region.
That's why I didn't want to jump ahead, because I was just getting ready to say that. Well, let her tell you. All right? This is why that happened. All right? But you hear these idiot patriot Americans. Well, how dare they keep our citizens hostage for 440 days? The audacity. No. You did that. You caused that. It's called cause and effect. Another thing that especially Americans, we're talking about the whole Edomite nation, whether they be called American, French, Russian, whatever, German, they're all Edomites, Italian, all right, and all those countries, small or great in between, all right, that's an MO of these motherfuckers, all right. Again, like I stated before, they do shit and never want to be held accountable for how they fucked up who's ever left in their wake. All right, continuing on.
In a moment, we'll be joined by two guests who've researched the coup for years. But first, we turn to the trailer of the documentary Coup 53.
In 1953, the United States, together with Britain, participated in a coup in Iran that got rid of Mossadegh.
Mossadegh and his
Why?
were swept from power in favor of General Zahedi.
Why?
Killed and hundreds wounded is a conservative.
And you have to ask yourself, why? She's going to get into it. For those that don't know,
The government has never officially acknowledged its role in the coup.
look at that devil.
At any time we really planned a coup d'etat.
These words have not been heard or seen for over 34 years. Evidence that has the potential to turn a dark chapter in history inside out. Your British counterpart was in fact blank. Could you tell me something about the man blank? Norman Derbyshire, take one.
He was somebody who felt that there were things to be said that hadn't been said.
A member of the British government who was involved in the assassination of the chief of police.
How did it come to this?
So they tied him up, strangled him, and shot him. Were you involved in Afshar II's assassination?
Yes. My father is a real prime minister.
The coup in Iran is shaping politics to this day. The United States does not want democracy in the Middle East.
There you go.
Trailer of the documentary Coup.
Did you hear that part before she cut in? The United States does not want democracy in the Middle East. And when you factor in them slick, sly, little hats over there in what's actually our land, what they call the state of Israel. See, they play these little word games with you. Unfortunately, a lot of our people don't catch on. They're very careful not to call themselves a nation. It's the state of Israel. Remember, the scripture also says that a little one shall draw them out. Let's get that real quick. Thinking of Obadiah 2 about make them small amongst the heathen. Damn, I lost my train of thought. Let's see, is that is it Jeremiah or is it, hold on. I think it's 20. No, it must be Jeremiah. Slakia. Why do I always do that? Alright, let's see. Yeah, here it is. Jeremiah 49 and 20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Most High Yahweh, that he hath taken against Edom. Remember what I said, whether they call themselves American, French, German, Italian, Russian, the Netherlands, all that up there, anywhere, South African, Australian, they're still Edomites. That's the biblical nationality of these so-called white folk. All right? Let me read it again. Jeremiah 49:20. It says, therefore hear the counsel of the Most High Yahweh, that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath proposed against the inhabitants of Teman. That's the area there known today as Germany. Surely the least of the flock, all right, shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. Because believe you me, all that shit that's happening over there in that area, the so-called Middle East, all right, the small hats, the so-called Jews have a hand in it. Believe you me. All right. And who do they have pulling by their nose? America. Why? Because Americans, you gotta understand, this American so-called white man in their history have always thought that the Bible belongs to them. I mean, as much as we can say, well, you got to look at Spain, Portugal. Yes, true. But you got to understand the American so-called white man, even his fellow Edomites can't stand him because he goes way overboard. Right? He's exceptionally wicked. Yes. And this is what's leading up to Revelation 17, when the rest of his cohorts are going to say, fuck it. All right, 18th chapter 2, and you can also throw Obadiah, I believe it's verse 8. Let's get that real quick, since we finish with this. Let's see where it talks about, I believe it's verse 8, is it 7 or 8? Confederate? No, it was 7. It says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought, again, what are we talking about? Edom will be humbled, all right? And that's the process that's happening as I speak. All right, if you're paying attention. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. You know, you want to always threaten people with sanctions. You've got it to where, you know, you have people really in bondage because of these monies. You know, you talk about the WEF, the World Bank and all that. So you've got these people tethered to you by all the aid, but the aid comes with conditions. Just look at what's happening with Uganda and some other so-called African countries now. If you don't accept this way of life, we're going to withhold funding. And people are tired of this shit. This, first of all, it's sticking their nose in somebody else's business, their customs, which are not yours, and they do not agree with that shit, but you're trying to force them. You know, that's a whole nother video. Again, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread, I was just saying, have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. All right? So let's go back to the video.
Of the documentary Coup 53, directed by the Iranian filmmaker Taghi Amirani, who's joining us now. He made the film with the Oscar-winning filmmaker Walter Murch. We're also joined by Yervan Abrahamian. He's a retired professor of history at City University of New York, Baruch College. His most recent book is titled Oil Crisis in Iran, From Nationalism to Coup d'etat, the author of several books, including The Coup, 1953, the CIA, and the Roots of Modern U.S.-Iran Relations. We are talking about an event 70 years ago that has shaped not only the Middle East, but I think you could say...
And you have to wonder also, as I just mentioned, Amalek with his nose and everything over there. You got to understand, people have a long memory. All right, and the stupid, fat Americans, all right, evidently they don't even like to look at actual history because they're so afraid of how they will actually be portrayed in. Well, that's your problem. You shouldn't have did the shit in the first place. See, all this shit is coming back to haunt you. Habakkuk 2nd chapter, verse 16 specific. All right? Shameful spewing on that glory. All right? It's a shame now. It wasn't too long ago as you bragged about shit. I'm proud to be an American. Doesn't look that way so much anymore. This is why that CRT, all right, as they claim, this is the roots of that. But it doesn't matter because the Most High is in control of this, not you. All right, let's continue.
Politics in the world today. Ervand Abrahamian, if you can start off by talking about the significance of this moment. I mean, a year after the same model would be used to overthrow the democratically elected leader in Guatemala. But what happened, why the United States and Britain were so hell-bent on toppling democracy in Iran?
Democratically elected, remember?
Well, the official argument that's constantly repeated was it was to save Iran from communism and the Soviet threat. In reality, when you look at the documents, there was no communist threat or Soviet interest in Iran. The main concern of the United States was that if nationalization in Iran of oil was successful, this would set a terrible example to other countries where U.S. oil interests were present. Countries such as Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Indonesia. So the nightmare in Washington was that if you have a success...
Now, if you were listening, you understand all these years what's been going on. All right? Despite what they were telling you. All right?
Nationalization in Iran, this would be a contagious disease that would spread throughout the world, and this would change the whole balance of power. And this was really the main interest. But of course, American politicians don't want to admit that economic issues are at play with their foreign policy. So
there you go. And I've always said, if you want to understand what's going on as a so-called American, pay attention, learn, study, become aware of the foreign policy. America's foreign policy. What they've done. The story about, who was it that, was it Indonesia? Oh man, back in the 60s and 70s. What was his name? Sukarno, something like that. He made a statement. He said, you know, how they were threatened, you know, as far as shit like that. You know, these things you don't happen behind closed doors. But like I said, all this is coming out now. All right, American foreign policy. How they have shitted over various countries and peoples. All right. The American public is taught from an early age that this is that shining city on the hill, that golden city that everybody will do whatever they can to get over here because America is so great. And yet you've had a people over here that have been in bondage since before its inception. Wow. And that people includes so-called North American Indian, the so-called Negro, those peoples of the Northern Kingdom, which included Gad, as aforementioned. Issachar, we call them Mexicans now, all right, and all those people south and the islands, the Caribbean, etc. Those are all Israelites, all the way down to the tip of Argentina and going north into Canada, up the Arctic Circle. Those are Gadites. This whole Western Hemisphere. So, hey, you got a lot to pay for, and oh, aren't you going to pay?
To play this. They never mentioned this publicly. What they insisted was the so-called communist threat. The British, in fact, were quite honest about this.
Edomites.
They used the bogey of communism to basically persuade people that the coup was justifiable.
Did you hear that? They used the threat of communism. Same as they did over here. You know, the 50s, the McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, Joseph McCarthy. All right, the Red Scare, all that shit going on. And that's all the dumbass American, them commie bastards. Rah, 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 rah. So here, you know, Great Britain, they use the same tactic. Oh, look, oh no, the communist Russia. Manipulated the hell out of the
So
people.
when you say there was no communist threat to take over the country, but there certainly was a vibrant communist party in Iran at the time, the Tudeh Party, which backed nationalization, even though it also opposed Mossadegh on a bunch of issues. Wasn't the attempt of the United States to use, and actually, as I understand it, some of the documents revealed recently show that the British and the U.S. actually tried to stir up the population in Iran against the communists by actually backing false flag operations in the weeks before the overthrow.
They did that, but you know, the Tudeh Party was, you can say, had its strength in the factories, in the street. They organized strikes, demonstrations. But people in Washington, people like Roosevelt, the Dulles, Eisenhower, were hard-nosed realists. They knew that there's a difference between organizing a demonstration in Tehran to carrying out a revolution or a coup. And the CIA reports from Tehran, these are the actual CIA analysts on the ground, they said that the Tudeh Party was not a threat. It wasn't even prepared for a coup. It wasn't talking and thinking of a coup. And even the readings that was required for Tudeh Party members in 1953 was Lenin's work on ultra-leftism, infantile leftism. So a communist party was thinking about a coup or a revolution would not be using Lenin's infantile leftism as a main instruction book. So this was an imagined threat, and of course, the press, especially the New York Times, played up with this. They exaggerated the two-day strike, the size of their demonstrations, in order to create the mood in the American public that there was actually a major threat coming from the left in Iran.
Turn to an excerpt from Coup 53, where we see our other guest, the filmmaker Taghi Amirani, as he meets with Malcolm Byrne at the National Security Archive.
I am the Deputy Director and Research Director at the National Security Archive, which is a non-governmental organization based at George Washington University. There are at least 3 internal histories that the CIA has produced. In probably the late 1970s, one of these items was produced.
Is this when you write to them asking for information?
Well, this is the response letter to me saying we're enclosing this document that you requested, and then here's the document itself called Battle for Iran.
Battle for Iran. It's still going on.
This is what's new about this release, covert action. In earlier versions, which you will see, this is all blotted out. Keep that out.
So we can take this one out?
There's still a lot that's not there.
I like the fact that there's still a lot of blank pages.
They're supposed to show you what was there.
Right.
What was new was essentially this page. The military coup that overthrew Mossadegh and his National Front cabinet was carried out under CIA direction. They had never, to my knowledge, officially acknowledged their role in the coup.
I'm standing in front of a filing cabinet of a drawer full of documents that essentially changed the fate of my country and changed my fate. You know,
what happened to me, what happened to my family, my it's just like how your lives, your destiny, your fate is encapsulated in a half a file drawer. In a half, this is it. This just changed Iran. This box of papers.
In this next clip from Coup 53, Taghi Amirani reads from the interview transcripts he found with the MI6 spy Norman Derbyshire that were done for the British TV series End of Empire.
Excellent. If we want the coup in detail, and even if not, why did they select bits of interview from him, cut it out, paste it into a script, probably edit it into the film? But he didn't make the final cut. He's not in the finished film. In a remarkable stroke of luck, we've discovered that the British Film Institute archive hold all the unused footage from the End of Empire Iran episode. Freely available to the public, but never digitized until now. 36 cans of film, 520 minutes of interview, among which we hope to find Norman Derbyshire. And it's recording. Great. We digitized the entire collection of End of Empire given to us by the BFI. We did not find Norman Derbyshire.
And in this clip from Coup 53, Taghi Amirani goes through the photographs and film clips he accessed from End of Empire, the British TV series about the end of the British Empire, as he searched for footage of the MI6 spy, Norman Derbyshire.
British Embassy staff photograph, Tehran, class of 1952. And this is Norman Derbyshire. Looking very much the cool undercover spy. Derbyshire would have been 29 when this photograph was taken. He was born on the 1st of October 1924. And he died on the 17th of June 1993. His CIA counterpart was Stephen Mead. We found his can of film, even though he's not in the finished film. Stephen Mead on Iran. This is what End of Empire production team thought of Stephen Mead. A young 69, hatchet-faced, like a bit part player.
See, this provides a whole new perspective on this, because even though you might have heard the story, you never knew the players involved. All right, so you got a little more in-depth view now. All right, it's weird. All right.
B-movie thriller, and above all, good. This is brilliant. Wow. Your British counterpart was in fact blank. Could you tell me something about the man blank?
Your British counterpart was in fact Norman Derbyshire. Could you tell us something about the man, Norman Derbyshire?
Oh, I didn't know him at all before I met him.
What kind of a man was blank?
What kind of a man was Norman Derbyshire?
What kind of a man was Norman Derbyshire? And why has his name been blanked out in these documents?
And in this clip from Coup 53, the actor Ray Fiennes reenacts the part of the Norman Derbyshire interview transcript found after he was interviewed, but did not appear in the End of Empire series.
Norman Derbyshire, take one. What you're about to see here as the team sets up at the Savoy is the result of our failure to find any film or audio of the Derbyshire interview. So we've resorted to bringing his words to life. Oh, there it is. Okay. Ray Fiennes is about to speak Derbyshire's words recorded back in 1983, telling us things the British didn't want anyone to hear. And these are the bits that the people who made the original documentary loved, which is also what we love.
Sorry, I'm getting drawn into the...
Just imagine how I felt when I came across it. It was one late night in the office.
Again, a clip from Coup 53. Taghi Amirani was an Iranian physicist who became a filmmaker and directed this documentary, Coup 53, released August 19th, 2019, the anniversary of the US-backed, MI6-backed, or I should say created coup that overthrew the democratically elected leader of Iran. This is an astounding documentary. This is a documentary, Taghi, the likes of which we rarely see. If people are wondering why Ray Fiennes isn't it, the famous actor, it's because he was replacing the cutout words of this British spy. If you can talk about what Derbyshire means in terms of British history in Iran, and also on the U.S. side, Kermit Roosevelt, who will later talk quite honestly about how he went on behalf of the Dulles brothers, right? John Foster Dulles and Allen Dulles, the head of the CIA and the State Department.
Got an airport name for that bastard.
Dulles, who had represented corporations interested in overthrowing democracies, and overthrew Mossadegh.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you, and I'm delighted that you find the film astounding. And if it's astounding, it's entirely due to Walter Murch and the incredible cast of interviewees, including Professor Abrahamian, along with Stephen Kinzer and David Talbot and Malcolm Byrne, who were...
Let me do this real quick. I want to be sure. I don't want to leave anything, false information. Which Dulles brother is that name? Because somebody will say, well, see, GMS, look at that, let's see. Alright, she said John Foster, I just want to be sure. Let's see. Here we go. Alright. Yeah, okay. So I was right. Yeah, it is named after John Foster Dulles. I just want to be sure. Because sometimes, you know,
along with Stephen Kinzer and David Talbot and Malcolm Byrne, who were the backbone of commentary and knowledgeable information on the coup. In the absence of the British official admission to their leading role in this coup, Norman Derbyshire's interview and its transcript stands in for that admission. Imagine you're making a film about the most important, pivotal event in your country's history, which didn't just affect Iran, but the region and the world, as we've discussed, and we will discuss more. And you find a man who was essentially the writer and director of this coup, in his own words, revealing the most incredible amount of detail, going rogue for whatever reason. We can speculate as to why he went rogue as the leading MI6 officer in charge of the coup, giving this incredible interview, and then vanishing. And for whatever reason, the End of Empire producers, Brian Lappin, Norma Percy, Mark Anderson, and Alison Roper, could not or did not use this interview in any form in their film. We got lucky. I got lucky. I'm not the world's best documentary maker, but I am the luckiest in the team I got together, the interviewees I managed to persuade to appear, and just a lucky break to come across this transcript, which was ironically in the basement of Mossadegh's grandson in Paris, until I showed up and found it by chance. And my mind just blew by the level of revelation and staggering amount of detail.
Yeah, because you can understand this guy, I'm guessing he's in his mid-60s maybe. He grew up with this, you know, and he's finding out at advanced age he is just how America and Britain fucked his people over. Imagine that. The details that were left out, all right? After all these years, he's seeing that, all right? Much the same as we, all right, being out here on the highways and byways, and the Holy Spirit, you know, blessed us, opened our eyes provided that eyesight, all right, that we see these things that we're seeing, you know, the fine details, as it were. And more revelations are coming out. Just how they screwed our people over, to the point to where they're not calling us who we really are. You know, we call black, anything and everything. This whole thing has been a huge game of keep away. Keep these people from finding out who they really are. And everybody's been in on it.
Tuggy, I've been running. I wanted to ask you the lessons for today, especially for people in other parts of the world about these coups, is the way that the British government and the U.S. government often try to mask their actions by promoting so-called demonstrations or uprisings in the street against governments that they wanted overthrown. Particularly, I think, in the Iranian situation, the use of radical Islamic clerics. For instance, there was at the time Ayatollah Kashani, who had been a collaborator with the Nazis during World War II, but then was utilized by the British and the Americans to stir up protests against the Mossadegh regime.
Yep.
And of course, there was a young cleric, Khomeini, a follower of Kashani, who was in the street protesting against Mossadegh at the time. Could you talk about how the use of by the United States and the British, because of course they went on to do it in Afghanistan, against Sadat in Egypt and others, to use radical Islamic clerics as a means to attack modernists or progressive political leaders?
Anything to destabilize that country in order to get its resources. All the man at the end of the day wanted to do was nationalize his resource for his people. But as you heard at the beginning, no, they couldn't have that. And she named different countries, several of which I'm sure you've heard over the years. Venezuela was one. All right, and that even goes to the so-called African continent. Now you understand why the events that took place with Gaddafi. Now you understand why. Because what did Gaddafi want to do? He wanted to create a currency for that continent, since they got all the resources. Ooh, but you know who would have been fucked if that had gone into become a reality? The people that run this world. The ones pretending to be us. Amalek, the so-called Jew. The central banks, all that would have been fucked. So they had to get rid of him. And this is the thing too, some of his own people were responsible for backing, just as here. See how they use people, stir up strife like he's describing here. And just as he did, that's another MO of the so-called white man. You look at Gad, those that he used against each other. Same with us. Okay, this is again his MO. This is what he does. This is a fucking devil. And the fools don't know for sure, but later on, that's why I don't feel sorry for whatever happened, what's going on over there in Libya. You did that to yourself. Because from what I've always understood as far as Libya goes, that I'm saying this because even though we're talking about Iran here, it's the same fucking game that's being played. Alright? So, you participated in actions that not too far down the road, alright, fucked your whole nation up. Why? For someone that didn't give a fuck about you in the first place. Now, from what I heard of Libya, as I was getting ready to describe, all right, Gaddafi took care of him. He had free education. But then you had that element that were, for whatever reason, dissatisfied. And they saw, again, America and the West. All right. You know, that grass is greener on the other side. Well, they're finding out that it was fucking barren. That was just an illusion. All right. So, hey, fuck them. Well, let's go back to the video.
My enemy's enemy is always my friend.
There you go.
In fact, Ayatollah Khamenei
there you
was
go.
very much on Mossadegh side. They were working together in trying to nationalize oil and stand up to the British. They parted ways in July 1952 in a huge demonstration when Mossadegh resigned. Because he wanted to have more control in the executive power and wanted the Shah to be just a simple symbolic monarch. But they parted ways because in Khamenei's eyes, Mossadegh was kind of a hungry dictator and trying to keep too much control in his hands. The melting pot of the currents against Mossadegh was multifaceted. The mob was created, the religious community turned against him. Of course, agents were on the ground. Bribery was obviously a key point. The press were caught. These are the key ingredients of any coup. And once you've got those key elements in place, including assassination of key allies, it's a repeat and rinse process. I don't have information of Ayatollah Khomeini, a young Khomeini, being in the crowd, but I know in Oliver Stone's series, The Secret History of the United States, or The Untold History of the United States, it is mentioned. But there's a lot of debate about the conflict between Khamenei and Khomeini. Khamenei and Mossadegh. He certainly expressed delight at the fall of Mossadegh post-coup. And he had ambitions about being the leader of the Muslim world, not just in Iran. But Mossadegh had he'd written his own death sentence the moment he nationalized oil. The British decided he had to go that moment. In fact, we have people in our interviews from End of Empire saying the moment he came into office, we knew we had to get rid of him. The bogeyman of communism.
These
was
fucking
exactly
devils,
that.
man.
We have documents.
How dare you?
We put out in our new sequel where we're making a coda.
The hypocrisy of these motherfuckers going around the world preaching democracy. Well, what does that mean? It's supposed to mean that, you know, if the people were behind you, okay, you know, majority rule. But no, we find out that it's more than that. This is something totally different. And again, like he just said, the moment he let it be known that he was going to nationalize the oil, oh, you were a threat. Same thing with Gaddafi and others. And then they mysteriously become unalived. Wow.
What happened to Coup 53 since its release, called Coup 53.1, and in that we show these documents where the Americans are discussing with the British whether they'll come in and join the coup, and they're discussing share of the oil, basically saying, yeah, we'll help you if you can have a slice of, you know.
Goes back to parted my land, you know, that same strategy, all right? These devils, the nerve. This is someone else. This is another. Goodness. Now you see why this devil has to go. All right. Now you see why he's hated of the Most High. These people, the nerve of these people. All right.
Which is exactly what happened post-coup in the consortium that was formed, in which the American oil companies walked away with 40%. And so, yeah, it's still debated. It's still a hot topic. Of course, the impact's still with us. We're living with the consequences of the coup, and it, of course,
all these years later.
The CIA to go out
70 years now.
Guatemala. In fact, this year we're marking the 50th anniversary of the Chilean coup. Pinochet replacing Allende, like the Shah replaced Mossadegh.
Another one.
History is not the past. The past is not the past, and we're still living with the ripples of this disastrous event.
Tagio Marani, if you can talk about specifically the U.S. role, you have this fascinating interview. What is it? The interview with Kermit Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt's grandson, who is an official within the CIA, says he takes a couple suitcases filled with money, $1 million, but actually it only cost him $60,000. But talk about what he did in Iran, and doing this at the behest of the British. It was Anglo-Iranian oil, now BP. Iran had thrown out the British, seeing...
Why? Because at the end of the day, this is about Edomite/white supremacy. See, they're going to be on code. Again, even though that's falling apart now, but whether they be American Edomites, I'll say it again, French, German, Russian, they're going to be on code. Alright, because racism is a team sport. But with Jake, we have no team.
Realized that the British were fomenting a coup. So they called on the U.S., and ultimately it would be under Eisenhower that they would overthrow Iran.
Yeah. See, we all grew up with the story of the CIA coup run by Kermit Roosevelt. As Professor Abrahamian puts it very eloquently in our film, Kermit didn't speak Persian. He was only in Iran for 3 weeks. He didn't know Iran at all. He was more of a bagman and an adventurist. And he was allowed to go and take credit for the coup. He wrote books about it. He was on chat shows, talk shows. He had contracts. He had audiences with the Shah. He did really well out of this coup. And Derbyshire, as Ray Fiennes tells us in a brilliant interview in the New Yorker, essentially wanted his curtain call. He wanted to reclaim credit for what was his show. In fact, just last week, there was a huge profile of Derbyshire in the Guardian by Julian Borger, the foreign affairs editor of the Guardian. Went in great detail about his life and his motives, and so this is essentially partly professional rivalry. I do all the hard work. Derbyshire was in Iran from the age of 19 as a soldier. He spoke probably better Persian than me. He knew the Iranian street. He really understood the psyche of the Iranian mob, as he says in the interview in our film. He knows how to turn them, what buttons to press. This was a Derbyshire project. And as we talked about earlier, the British wanted their oil back. This coup was always about oil. It's always about oil. Iraq was about oil. Venezuela is about oil. It's always about oil. As the great Robert Fisk said, if Iraq's only export was turnips, you wouldn't be there. And so Derbyshire is the main star of this film. For whatever reason, he didn't appear. We got lucky. We found him. We got lucky. We got Ray Fiennes to be his avatar. And everything that happened to Coup 53, the incentive for me making this film is the British have not officially admitted to their key role, their leading role. This was an MI6 coup aided by the CIA, who was dragged in. It was a new organization in 1953. It was the first time it went off campus to play, and it did well. You know, it was quick, it was cheap, and no Americans were killed, or a few hundred Iranians died, but who cares about that? So it emboldened them to do it again. And it was, you know, there's a letter from Alan Dulles to Kermit after he comes back from Iran saying, have a great weekend. Come in on Monday. I've got some other ideas. Obviously, Guatemala coming up. There was one other thing I had to say. Kermit Roosevelt, in not really being an expert, giving the playing field to write his book and give that interview to. As the clip that we see in the film where he says, I had $1 million, I'd spent 60,000. He gives another interview and he says, I had 700,000, I only spent 10,000. I wouldn't take anything Kermit Roosevelt says at face value as the truth. He was a fabricator of stuff and a self-aggrandizing guy. And that I can see will also not sit well with Derbyshire. Kermit just spewing out different stories about how much money he spent. Derbyshire says in his interview, the coup cost £700,000. I know because I spent it.
I'd like to bring in Professor Abrahamian into the conversation again. Professor, this whole issue of the change in administrations in the United States, because the nationalization happened during the Truman administration, but President Truman was reluctant to intervene. According to some accounts, it was only when Eisenhower came in, and of course the Dulles brothers, as part of his administration, that the coup moved forward as far as the United States was concerned. Could you talk about the change in administrations and also the impact on Iran subsequent to the coup, of course leading up to eventually the Iranian Revolution of 1979?
Yes, I mean, the conventional view is, as you said, it's that the Truman, the Democratic administration was willing to negotiate and deal with Mossadegh. It was the Republican Eisenhower administration that carried out the coup. The trouble is, if you look at the documents, right from the beginning, as soon as Mossadegh was elected prime minister and nationalized, the Americans, at that time, the Truman administration was just as eager to actually get rid of Mossadegh. It was not, they weren't thinking about a coup, they were thinking of a political means of getting rid of him. In fact, they asked the Shah to dismiss him. They misunderstood the Iranian constitution. The Shah didn't have the power to dismiss him. So right from the beginning, the Truman administration was really trying to ease the Mossadegh out. But the interesting thing is, the reason for that was not because they were against coups. It was much more surprisingly the Shah's reluctance to carry out a coup. The Shah, right in 51, said that if I go against Mossadegh and oil nationalization, I will delegitimize my monarchy, the whole of my authority. I cannot do that. And he was the one who was very reluctant to carry out the coup.
We have 30 seconds, Professor.
Right. What the Truman administration really wanted to do was get rid of Mossadegh through the political process. It was only when that failed that the new administration then actually put into effect a military coup.
We want to thank you both for being with us. Yervan Abrahamian, retired professor of history at the City University of New York, most recent book, Oil Crisis in Iran from Nationalism to Coup d'etat, and Taghi Amirani, the Iranian filmmaker, director of Coup 53. Everyone should see it.
So there you have it, just had to, it's better that you see this in its entirety and let them tell it, because they created this. That's the way but let's get some more scriptures here and then I'll cut it loose. All right, let's see. All right. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 14. For the Most High shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And this is certainly evil. All right. Let's see. 1 Corinthians 4 and 5. Therefore judge nothing before the time. Let's see. Until the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness and will make manifest the counsels of their hearts. All right, they tell you why they did this. Remember, they said the moment that they understood that he was going to nationalize his natural resource, the British said, oh no, he got to go. So you know why they did it. You know what was up here? What was the thought process? And make manifest the counsels of the hearts, and then shall every man have praise of the Most High. All right? And that's going to do it. Evil, wicked. These people are indeed the wicked. Malachi 1st chapter. All right? So once again, this is a Democracy Now! It's always about oil. CIA and MI6 staged coup in Iran 70 years ago, destroying democracy in Iran. These fucking hypocrites. Hey, so with that, once again, I hope whoever views this is edified. Alright? This is how things are supposed to go. Alright? Our Constitution, our scriptures, alright, is what we're supposed to live by. Alright? And as such, this is how you do. You filter these things through the scriptures. Past, present, and future. That's what that is a living book. The scriptures, the Bible, is a living book. Alright, so with that, until the next video, hey, shalom.